kind of like I think people like Michael Jordan as kind of a unique kind of character.
And
I love
You just see how games and possessions are more intense, how they mean more.
I'm not putting him on.
I think the U.S. is going to obviously win.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Nothing But Respect. This isn't an emergency pod because we already had it planned, but obviously there was some, late breaking news that we will discuss with our guest Owen Phillips and Patrick Redford. I am, of course, talking about the fact that Max Reed has reviewed all three of the equalizers on his letterbox, which means people are putting together, little gumshoes are putting together a Max Reed equalizer deep dive post is likely coming soon. So I'm glad we can kind of shoehorn that conversation into this, general NBA conversation.
Yeah, the Reed Max, maximum read of Max Reed posts, I think that's going to be a really fun sort of off-season-y episode. I know Max is a hoops guy, but, we'll have to talk about, obviously, the Knicks Thunder finals, but, we'll have to hear about his movie takes, too, of course.
I want to hear about the equalizer. No, I'm kidding. The late breaking news was Mike Malone got fired, which is crazy.
That is crazy. Also Calvin Booth too. Owen, first question for you. What's going on with that?
What are the numbers saying?
Yeah, do you have a chart that could illustrate how crazy this is?
It is interesting. Someone was talking about, or someone had charted this guy named Lev who works at Sporting News, and he was looking at the tenure of head coaches right now and how long the average head coach lasts. And right now, Tom Thibodeau is the fourth longest tenured head coach.
I saw this.
And he's been there for 5 years or something like that, I think. So maybe just time had run its course, but all indications from the reporting and just general scuttlebutt is that the vibes have been bad there for a while, and this is just, I guess, the day of reckoning.
Yeah, that's an interesting sort of starting point for this discussion, and I do wonder, and I have an actual chart question, though I know you haven't run the numbers on this probably. Are coaches staying around longer now? I don't know, the game has obviously changed, and the thoroughness with which you have to scout and the way the game is played is different now. And I wonder if that's going to lead to more or less coaching turnover.
And coaches are becoming millennials, or I should say millennials are becoming coaches, which is that the generation used to having 17 jobs. So I do wonder if there's a cultural thing there too.
Yeah, I don't have a good answer for it. I would say the thing that's kind of surprises me the most is that usually GMs get to fire at least one coach. Their tenure gets to last at least two head coaches. So the fact that they did it one fell swoop, kicked Calvin Booth and Mike Malone out of there is a little interesting and suggests it's more than just a coaching problem. It was a total environmental, toxic, maybe, workplace or something like that going on that seems to suggest there's more than just, hey, this guy's X's and O's sucked.
Yeah, that is interesting. And we've now, there was a lot of people sort of, I don't know if it was wringing their hands is exactly the right way to criticize it, but a lot of people noticing that every coach that's won a title, and also Monty Williams, who was very successful with the Suns, and then the opposite of that, that winning doesn't really give you a very long leash afterward. And that does feel somewhat new. I don't really have much of a take around that other than probably that sort of makes sense. It seems like the ideal outcome for any team is basically to hire Eric Spoelstra or Mark Daigneault, and that you will find out pretty quickly if you experience some amount of turmoil and then it kind of gets worse and or just doesn't sort of stabilize on its own, that you don't have one of those guys. And unless you are, this is why it's weird, unless you are about to compete for another title, you should probably try to find someone younger. And that's what is very strange is that until this little losing streak, I think a lot of people thought of the Nuggets as the second best team in the good conference, right?
It was, I was looking at these, that there two teams this year fired a coach with a either well above 500 or probably top, in the Nuggets case, if they weren't well above 500, a top 10 FanDuel odds to win the championship. That it might just be 2 data blips and the same thing, but that is the only other high, like really, really winning coach that got fired was the Bucks guy, which was also sort of a vibe meltdown mixed with a coup from Doc Rivers.
One thing I'll say is that like this is just pure working theory and like no like inside information, but I do know that the guy in Memphis who's now the head coach, Isolo or whatever his name is, and is it David Adelman or is it Rick Adelman? Whichever's the assistant
Rick is
coach.
the father.
And now Rick's the father. He was the Kings guy, right, for a while or something like that. Yeah, and now David Adelman is the assistant coach in Denver. Now he's going to be the head coach. There are going to be probably like 5 head coaching vacancies this summer, and maybe both the Memphis and Denver realized, oh crap, like our lead assistant might get poached, and we think they actually might be better than our head coach. So like let's get a quick look at this guy before we just like let him walk or don't have the chance to like match whoever's offer or something like that. So that is something I've been thinking about.
That makes sense, and I also wonder if it's like you do see a lot of teams get the like dead coach bounce, and it could be a market inefficient. Maybe we already said this about the Jenkins
they're
one.
timing it out. Yeah, they're dialing in the dead coach bounce.
And then the Nuggets saw the Grizzlies get that little pop. And I do actually want to talk about the Grizzlies with you later because Owen, you've really helped me understand how weird they are this year. But like maybe the Nuggets saw that and they were like, okay, if we just do that and then like even later, like we're golden, baby.
Yeah, Ty Lue's gonna get fired in the Western Conference Finals.
I would say it makes them unscoutable, but like that team in particular is so Jokic-y that it's not like they're like gonna run different stuff now.
Yeah, the thing that it's so funny that this happened because I swear I was laying in bed last night and I was having trouble sleeping and I was just like thinking about are there certain head coaches we think are good but like maybe secretly aren't and are just sort of being carried by like their star player? Like I've always sort of thought in the back of my mind like are Steve Kerr really that good or is Steph Curry just like so amazing and Steve Kerr is like pretty good and has his respect of Curry so like he gets to stick around. And I was thinking about that also, that same framework with like Michael Malone. Like people have long like thought Michael Malone is a little bit of a Jokic merchant, and he's like his job has been saved like 3 different times by Jokic going like nuclear in the playoffs. And so I always thought like it didn't really matter if he was good or bad if Jokic had his respect or if he had Jokic's respect, like it just totally didn't matter. But it seems like something happened there. Maybe it was the reporting seems to suggest there was like a lot of friction between head coach and front office and all that stuff. So I don't know, something I was thinking about just like our perception of what a good coach is versus like what an actual good coach is behind the scenes, I think is like very misaligned between like fans and internal with the team.
That is really interesting. Like, I think, because like what fans see is basically, does the team win and does everyone try hard for a long time, right? And if you have worked for a team, you worked for the Knicks, and it seems like coaching is like those are just like outcomes. Like we don't really know, fans don't really know about like the process of coaching. Is my sort of read from the outside.
Yeah, no, it's totally true. Yeah, so I mean, I have a sample size of 1. I worked for the Knicks for 3 seasons under Tom Thibodeau, who's, I wouldn't say like the like league average coach in any way, shape, or form. My experience is maybe not like true to like someone else's experience, but I do think it is true that like what goes on behind the scenes, what's happening in practices, what's happening in walkthroughs, how do you keep players like connected and motivated and stuff like that. That's all like the bullshit that happens, outside of the view of like any fan or in particular or anything like that. And that's the kind of stuff that actually ends up mattering. So like if you're going through like a tough streak where you're losing 4 games in a row, like the Nuggets are, if Malone has everybody's respect, it kind of like doesn't matter if they're going through a 4-game losing streak. But I was listening to like his press conference the other day after one of the losses, and he was like saying something like, he's like, we got to fix stuff, and like if someone has a problem with that, you need to speak up right now. And like no one said anything, which is like a good indicator that no one's like everyone's kind of tuned him out, which maybe that's kind of the reason why he got fired.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, we will. I've got a little kind of micro conspiracy theory about this, but I want to save it for a second because I want to talk about Take Week, which is something that you just got done, which I loved. As this podcast is fueled on takes. So seeing them all packaged in daily drops was excellent. What was the kind of idea behind Take Week, and then what were some of the spiciest ones you saw?
Yeah, so like the general conceit was I have a lot of friends who like work in analytics in some capacity, whether it's like for a team, for like a different league, for like a front office, or for like a league office, or like a tech company or something like that. But they all use like analytics in their job in some way or form, shape or form. And I have found that when you work in like analytics, it's very difficult to just have a vibes-based take on a lot of stuff, because people come to like think of your work as like empirically driven and data driven and stuff like that. And so if you just like kind of shoot from the hip a little bit, it's like not seen as appropriate. So I asked a bunch of people I knew who worked in analytics in some shape or form if they just like had something they wanted to write about. It didn't have to be data driven, but it could be if they wanted it to. And just like I was going to put it all in a newsletter and shoot it out. And so I got 10 people. Well, I got 9 people. I wrote one of them. I'm not going to tell you which one I wrote.
Ooh.
And you guys can try to figure that out. Or maybe
Jeff
I wrote
Green one, for sure. The Jeff Green one.
Jeff Green one. What were some of the spiciest ones? Okay, so obviously, like if I publish them, I kind of co-sign some of them to some degree. So, so some of the good ones I thought were just like Paulo Banchero has already peaked, and the Magic kind of need to move off of him immediately. If they want to actually get out this like treadmill of mediocrity. Otherwise, they're going to be chasing.
Dude, that's
like,
big
the 60s.
spice. That's great. How old is he? 23 years old.
Probably
it doesn't
not
matter.
even.
Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. Like,
Stop using analytics, Harry. This is a
No,
take
no.
argument.
I'm sorry.
You know,
I'm validating the
23.
spice. I like it.
Yeah. So like, I mean, the general like take on that one is just like this guy is like he does the thing that's almost the easiest thing to find in the NBA, which is put up a lot of points on like league average to below league average shooting efficiency. And like the counter argument is like, okay, he's 23, maybe he'll get more efficient as he gets older. Counterpoint might be like, what if he doesn't? Like he has not shown any ability to be able to shoot. He's kind of like a ball stopper. He's not a fun player to watch. As someone who had like front row seats to watching Julius Randle, I see a lot of similarities between Paulo's game and Julius's game. And at the same time, like all the things that people use to defend Paulo, it's like, well, why doesn't these things apply to Franz, who's like doing the same thing but doing it better, playing the exact same position? So anyway, also just like the whole idea is like the new, like I think team building way to build a team in like 2025 is you need other teams' picks. You can't just rely on your own picks to like build a contender. Orlando doesn't really have any other team's picks. I think they have one like Denver Nuggets pick.
I think this
Probably
is the
isn't.
last one that conveys this year.
Okay. So yeah, it's like it's not that
But it's
valuable.
basically
So
over. Yeah.
so the idea is like trade Paulo to a team and get their picks, and then use that to like build a contender around Franz. Okay, so that's one. I don't know if you guys have any responses to it.
I sort of like the general, like, there's a couple outlines of this theory that I really like. Like, one is I've been following basketball for a long time. The thing this year that's been sort of different for me that I've like used as a lens to look at the game is kind of just this general theory of like opportunity cost. Like every shot that every player takes on every team is a shot that like could be going to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that like there are developmental timelines, so it sort of makes sense for like, I don't know, like Osar Thompson to pretend to shoot 5 threes a game or whatever, because like you have to do that. But like this idea that actually you will know how good a player is pretty quickly, and this is sort of like a Killian Hayes corollary theory of just like, actually sometimes guys just suck and won't get better. Mm-hmm. And there is a sort of like the coaching take earlier, like maybe a good team building strategy is just like sell high as much as you can, bet on shorter developmental cycles, and like not, you know, just because Michael Carter Williams say wins the Rookie of the Year, not really like banking on one of those type of guys getting better. Maybe this is also just Keegan Murray bad season cope too.
I mean, go ahead, Harry. No, go ahead.
I was going to say it almost never happens. The sell high thing,
Yeah.
like it, you know, you hear about it going wrong sometimes with like Harden and OKC, and then I guess like Sabonis kind of, or Oladipo kind of, but there are opportunities where it could have happened. For example, I mean, a great example. Well, I don't know even how much legs this had, but the very beginning of the season Kuminga for Amen Thompson conversation. It's like, can you imagine how that would look like now? So, I think it takes stones for a team to want to do it. And when they do it,
there's also just like the front office, drafted Paulo. Like, they have incentives to like hope that he's good because that's the reflection of how good they are at their job. So like the chances of this happening are probably next to none. But I do think there is, like, this gets to like one of my larger working theories about the NBA, which is that there are way more players that could average 20-ish points a game on league average efficiency if given the opportunity. Yes. We see it every summer in international basketball when like Rondé Hollis-Jefferson like goes off like crazy.
For the country
of
Jordan, I believe, right?
Yeah, exactly. Or like Dennis Schroeder looks like the greatest point guard in like the world. So I do think there are way more players who are capable of doing that, but they get funneled into these particular roles. And it's like there's not enough like games and shots to go around to actually see if there is a player who could sustain that kind of efficiency. Like Quentin Grimes, like all of a sudden Philadelphia looks like someone who could maybe like average close to 20 points a game and doing it on like league average efficiency. Like I used to have this like take in my head, which is like, who is the worst player in the NBA that I think could average 20 points a game on league average efficiency? And my example for this for the longest time was Alec Burks. He's a little washed now, but you've probably seen him in Golden State, Harry. But like that guy is like kind of a bucket. Like he can shoot threes.
He almost did hit 20.
Yeah, Sacramento Kings legend too. We all have.
He was on
Alec
Burks.
Burks.
He's kind of a journeyman. He's been around for forever. But I love Alec Burks. I think he's
great.
A super useful player that's just like totally anonymous. That most people are like, who is this guy? But anyway, I've been trying to like think of who's the new example of that player. Maybe you guys can help me. Help me think of that.
Fournier comes to mind as another guy who sucked.
Yeah. He's out of the league now. He's not even playing anymore.
No, he's in that. Yeah.
I of course know the answer to this question, but can you just confirm for our audience? Is Alec Burks still in the league?
He's in Miami. He's actually played pretty well, I think, down there coming off the bench. All right, so just pivoting to some of the other takes that were.
One thing just on the team building, that what's fun about this is it sets up a like accelerationist process thing where you take another step toward kind of like evil team building, where it's like, we're not just going to be bad for 5 years. We're going to be bad for 5 years, draft a beloved star, then trade him 3 years in, be bad for another 3 years, and then we will win the championship. Like, just, we need a Sam Hinkie to be like, Sam Hinkie didn't go far enough. We need, we need Sam Hinkie 2.0.
I don't know. I would just be trying to get ahead of it if I was Orlando, because like this happens to all these teams. Like, you're a young team, you overperform, and then the next year you kind of like come back to the pack a little bit because you haven't made any major like off-season additions, and then it happens again the next year, and everyone's looking around like, oh, it's the coach's fault or it's the GM's fault and stuff like that, and those guys get fired. So I do think like there should be more like risk-seeking behavior for a lot of these like GMs who are mostly made men. Like, they're going to get another job somewhere else. Like Nico Harrison didn't give a crap. Although he's like catching a lot of arrows for that. But anyway, okay, so other takes that were thrown out there during take week. There was the like, I don't really spend a lot of time on draft Twitter, but draft Twitter seems like a totally miserable place, and someone wrote about how that place is like totally busted, and this is actually connects
it's so fucked up. It's great.
Yeah, it connects to like analytics tweeting at large too. Like, a lot of people who work in analytics, myself included, basically posted their way into a job. Like, I started a Substack, it got some attention from people in the league. Someone read it and was like, do you want to just come do this for the Knicks instead? And I think like that's been a template for like years for a lot of people. And like
Sebastian Pruitti, yeah.
Yep. The best people who were doing it, like, they've already been scooped up by teams. And so like all that's left are the people who weren't good enough, right, to get a job, or didn't want one, maybe in their defense. So you've got like this like void of people who are tweeting about stuff, kind of out of their ass, and it's not very good and not very fun to follow. Like, even like one of the guys whose takes were controversial to say the least, but were at least very interesting to read, was a guy named Dean on Draft. I don't know.
Yes, Patrick, I remember this guy. One of my favorites.
Okay. So Dean is actually like, I don't want to call him a friend, but we're friendly. Like we've been to a couple of dinners together at Summer League, and I always have a good time talking to him because his mind is different. He thinks about things differently. But if you go back and like read his big boards, like he kills it every year.
He has crazy. It's like never consensus too. It's totally crazy.
His whole shtick is that like you should not regress your opinion to the market or the consensus. Like it should be truly free of any sort of like bias from other people's opinions. And like a lot of people on Draft Twitter, what they do is they kind of look at like a big board and they kind of move players around, like 7 goes to 2 or 5 to 6, whatever. They just kind of move places around 1 or 2. Dean starts like from like ground zero, like, and then just sort of builds up from there. And what that results in is like some big misses, but a lot of like huge hits. So if you can go back and like read his draft board, he was like banging the drum on Sengun. He was like really high on certain players and really low on certain players that have turned out to be butt. But he's an interesting guy. But he like has a job in the NBA, so he doesn't even do his big board anymore. So that's another take.
Wait, the two Dean things. One, he was a huge Jokic guy. He was like one of the few people that year. He was like, this guy's a top 10 pick. The other is he at one point claimed to have mathematically solved dating, which a lot of people laughed at him. I can't find that post now. But like, I even have a hard time being cynical about that because like you said, it's like he doesn't start from here's the consensus, here's where I deviate. It's like he actually probably came at that with like an open, genuine heart.
Totally.
Hell yeah.
No, he's a one of one. Sorry, go ahead, Harry.
Well, I just going to say that the idea of these people getting scooped up and this kind of new, zone of what like the public square internet looks like. We've talked about it a little bit in past episodes about how some that's happened where writers have kind of posted themselves into the jobs, but those people are just still have the jobs, and so what do? It reminds me of this kind of theory that some people have posited about what the internet looks like right now, the dark forest theory, which is that the internet right now looks like walking through a dark forest at night, in that you're actually surrounded by people, but it looks empty. If you're walking through forest, you don't see all the critters, but they actually are everywhere. They're just in these like of other corners having private digital discussions. And that sounds right. Like maps pretty well onto this idea of like the smart people on the analytics posting are in these kind of like private, sequestered, encrypted, double encrypted Slack groups, for various teams and private entities, and the public internet is empty of smart analytics people, or not empty, but more empty than you would expect. So it's interesting at map.
No, it's accurate. I mean, there's a very popular Slack group among people like who would do like the kind of stuff that I am interested in, and it's like 200 of like people who are just like analytics people chatting in a Slack group, and like none of them post on Twitter anymore. They all just like throw their takes on Slack because they know like it's a safe space, and it's just kind of funny. We've long joked that it's like eventually a trade is gonna take place over this Slack in the DMs, because there's like now a critical mass of like NBA team employees who are in this Slack. That tracks.
Wow, that even like further validates it of where, because you hear about it with like Discords and Slack chats. But it seems like kind of exact proof there. Wow.
Yeah, I mean that's how I met a lot of these people, and gotten to know them. All right, so I'll leave you guys like with one more take. There's 10 of them. You can guys go read them on
they're
the
awesome.
They're really good
on the thing. So there's like a theory out there that that's popular within the analytics community, that opponent 3-point shooting is like more luck than like skill. So, and this is like a very controversial idea to anybody who hears about it for the first time, because you're like, what are you talking about? But let me just like walk you through like some like bullet points up top, so you can have like kind of a lay of the land as we talk about this take as it goes deeper. Okay, so here's what you need to know. Like in the NBA, 50% of threes are taken with the defender more than 6 feet away. So like 50% of threes are like wide open. So right off the top, like the defense isn't doing anything on 50% of threes unless they're like shit talking or something like that. There's hand nowhere near your face. The other piece of information you need to know is that when you look at like the season and you break it into two, you look at the first 41 games and the second 41 games, and you look at a team's opponent 3-point shooting in that first 41 games, and you try to correlate it with the second batch of 41 games, there's like no correlation whatsoever. So there's there's strong indication that teams can do like a little bit to suppress opponent 3-point percentage, but not that much. Like you can, force the bad shooters to take more shots. You can take away the corner three a little bit more than the above the big three, but that doesn't really explain like the biggest difference between the teams who are, allowing teams to shoot 35% from three versus the team that's shooting 40% from three. And like there is mountains of public and private research on this topic, and so I'm not going to cover it all here, but if you're interested, like feel free to get on Google. So anyway, the thing that has confounded people for years and years and years is that the Boston Celtics have been the single best team at defending the three in terms of opponent 3-point percentage for like the last 20 years. So this year, I think they're fourth in opponent 3-point percentage. So I think they allow the fourth, worst percentage on threes. But in 16 of the last 18 years, they've been top 10 in this metric. So this is diametrically opposed to the idea that this is, more luck than skill. So what are the Celtics doing differently than the rest of the league to combat the most powerful weapon in basketball, the 3-point shot, which led one person on Take Week to suggest that the Boston Celtics are cheating?
Listeners can't see, but Harry is sharpening a large katana right now and doing various sword exercises.
I am grinning ear to ear. Yes, right? I think we can all agree that that's happening.
Yes.
The Boston Celtics are cheating. I read this and, freaked out. I did some, a little bit of research. Because what's funny about this, beyond the sort of obvious aesthetic and sort of socio-cultural realities that the Boston Celtics are likely cheating, and then Deflategate and the kind of history of depravity in the New England area, is that the Celtics used to brag. There used to be all this sort of joking about the parquet and no one guarding toward dead spots and all that kind of thing. So you're telling me they're not doing one or two screw tightenings on the rim, and they're not thinking that that'll do it over time. They're real quick just to give a softer rim to one side.
I did look at it the first thing that went to my mind is it's definitely something like an arena effect. So I looked at the home road splits between Celtics opponent 3-point shooting at home versus on the road. There's not a major difference in one way or another. So that is, we're not gonna let that fact get in the way of a good story.
No, I mean there's other things. Yeah,
there's other things they could be doing.
Wait,
conceivably.
I have a stupid question. You talked about how first half and second half not correlating with each other is a point in support of the pure luck theory. I wonder if the good teams and good defenses have better opponent shooting percentage in either half of the season. Because we see it takes teams a while to sort of get into it and figure out how they're going to play. And I wonder if actually it's not as much luck, because you see that okay, in the second half of the season when the games, I don't know if the games matter more or less, whatever half the games matter more, you see better defenses holding teams to better percentages. Do you remember I guess that's sort of a crazy number of nested things to ask you to go look up right now, but I do wonder, I don't know. I think I just have a hard time accepting that it's all luck. So unfortunately, Harry, I have to counterpoint you here.
I want to preface that and be I don't think it's all luck, and I think the smart person analytics, a general consensus opinion is that there is a small measurable effect, but it doesn't explain all the the differences between the best and the worst teams. So if you are doing good things on defense, it can suppress opponent 3-point percentage. And the thing that's really important to remember is that when you play good 3-point defense, you don't actually make the shot worse. You just make it a different shot. If you're playing in the pickup and someone's guarding you really well, you don't take the shot, right? You just pass it to somebody else, or you dribble or whatever. And that happens in the NBA too. If the defense is smothering you, and is like gonna block it or whatever, you just pass the ball. That's like what happened last night in the national championship game. That guy rose up for like a last second three and then realized Walt Clayton was about to like swat that shit into the third row, and so he beefed it and tried to do something else. So like people confuse good 3-point defense with suppressing 3-point percentage, but what it really does is it suppresses 3-point attempts.
That's super interesting, and I've had a front row seat to this because the Kings are giving up like a crazy both percentage and volume from the line, and Kings fans have spent the entire year just whining about how this is pure luck, and then you watch the team play 5 minutes of basketball and you're like, they're lucky that twice as many threes don't get jammed on them.
All right, before we the only just a Celtics thing, a couple possible options. I did see like a wind gun on Instagram Reels, like a vortex gun that this guy was using to like shoot down Sprite cans. So there could be something like that. It obviously could be some sort of men who stare at goat situation, or like a Havana Ray radiation thing. Those are the three possible options.
Or like that Houston guy, you know, the aura and the championships, the lucky, you're thinking about Bill Simmons when you're out there defending. You just get nervous. Like, you're like, oh man, if I could, like, they could talk about me on the BS report next week. Like,
you're like history of this organization.
Yeah.
Along those lines, like I thought maybe I'd cracked it at one point because I was looking at like shot location data in the corner facing the opposing team's fans and stuff like that. So I thought like, oh, maybe like that particular area of the court, because like fans can like shout obscenities at you, might result in like a player shooting worse from three or whatever. And this year, I think actually like teams are shooting a little bit worse in those corners. But again, that only explains like the home version of this. That doesn't explain why Celtics opponents shoot worse from three on the road as well.
This is all so fucked up. Patrick, did you have any, if you were to have submitted a hot take, did you have any?
Yeah, this is one that I don't even know if it's that hot, and I might actually believe it, like 20%. Tim Duncan is the greatest basketball player of all time. Unfortunately, this relies on me like using a number of argumentative planks that I generally detest, which is rings, and winning percentage. But because obviously he has a million of each of those, and the Spurs should not have got him, but they pulled off this general tank job, only paralleled by the Sixers, who will inevitably get Cooper flagged this season. But my point is, when Tim Duncan was at his best, the NBA was so boring. Like 05, 06, like this, the drought years where between Lakers dynasties, LeBron is not quite good enough to actually challenge to win these finals. Like he made 05, but then got instantly swept by the Spurs. But I think basically a measure of dominance is how boring you can make the sport. Like, I don't know if either of you guys are cycling people, but there's sort of a version of this right now with the current best men's rider in the world where like fans, like hardcore fans, are like getting a little annoyed that like the races aren't fun to watch because the same guy just wins every time.
Right.
And using this totally arbitrary measure of excellence.
I actually really like this boring metric.
Okay, yeah.
Because it affirms the Warriors, 17-18 run as well.
Exactly. And like right now the league is so interesting, which is really a dire thing on Shea's candidacy as an all-timer. So
Yep. Okay, I like this. There is something there. I mean, and the case for Steph Curry rests atop the case. You like in geometry, you need to prove one proof that then you can cite in another proof. Like you need to prove a certain like value of intangible Duncanness to then make the kind of more aerodynamic claim that Steph is the greatest. So I'm there with you. Mine. I got three sort of quick ones. One, the current Lou Dort for Defensive Player of the Year is a sort of Watergate style cover up for the Marcus Smart DPOY fiasco, and they're like kind of reverse engineering consent for the idea that a 6'2" guy could win Defensive Player of the Year. That's one.
Interesting. Okay, wait. I have a question.
Yep.
Because you see it in the sort of the Shea MVP talk, and in the sort of like playoff preview discourse going now, pretty much everyone is either making the case or engaging with the idea that OKC sucks, and because they're all little babies who haven't played in the playoffs, will be like horrifically exposed when like the men show up. How does the Lou Dort DPOY factor into that, or does it not?
I think honestly, this actually does get into the kind of meta discussion we're going to have in the second half. But I think that most dumb people, I should say, or most like people who aren't super dialed into analytics, essentially co-op it for like PR wars, and like sort of are leveraging the shorthand that these analytics can help you with to like further some point, or some sort of like media narrative that they're hoping to put forth. And I am being a little tongue-in-cheek about the Lou Dort thing, but like that you can obviously Lou Dort's an excellent defender, but like when you're well, I guess
is he?
Okay, I like that.
Is he the best defender on his team?
I mean, that's my point. Is like probably like by
he's really
definition,
good at fouling.
He is really good at fouling, and like whatever, he plays hard. He seems like not fun to guard, but like to your point, like it just has to be a big ass guy who patrols the center and is like deterring, making it so, just having a greater effect on the flow of the offense. It feels like.
This is an interesting take for a lot of reasons. One is that Draymond Green is currently mounting this like insurgent
media campaign
and like potentially successful, like kind of insane one-man DPOY candidacy case thing for himself.
It's the best argument for player podcast I've seen.
Just to piggyback on Harry's point, like I think one of the biggest like media pushes behind Lou Dort's campaign is Bill Simmons. I think he was the one that was pushing for it on his pod with with Zach. I think it might have been with Zach, and he was the one that like kind of got the ball rolling. I think a little bit on that Marcus Smart DPOY campaign. So maybe there's something to that.
Exactly. Okay. The Malone firing and the Luka trade are downstream of woke. That's my second take. And what I mean, what I really mean is actually the you can see the emergence of the soy right in this in these trades, and it used to be that the players were the sissies. That was woke. The sort of anti-woke or soy right is now the ownership, the billionaire class conservative group. They're the ones who are sensitive and reactionary and like scared of microplastics and making crazy kind of frantic decisions. And so if the decision as TV spectacle is what kicked off woke, the Luka Doncic trade is what kicked off the soy right takeover of the NBA.
Interesting. Okay. I thought you were going to go in a slightly different direction.
Talk to me.
And make the case basically that like the disciplining of essentially like normal style middle class and upper middle class Americans, that's like sort of the plank of like the Trump Maoism tariffs thing, is similar to the coaching class being disciplined and told to like get back in the mines, buddy.
Interesting. I think there's a lot there.
I wonder how they dovetail. Huh.
Well,
Owen, you're not American, so a lot of this is not.
You
are American, but you don't live in the United States.
No, I live in.
God, it must be so nice.
Now.
Owen just has a blissful, contented smile spread from ear to ear.
Mm-hmm. Since you're Australian, are they throwing tariffs on your premium tier Substack posts? Or what's going on?
That's a good question. I think it's still like, technically based in the U.S. or whatever, where Substack's HQ is at, or something like that. But it's interesting. When I moved here, we moved here right after the election, not because of the election, but we moved here at the end of November, early December, and I was like, oh yeah, at least maybe we won't hear about Trump too much or anything like that. But no, it just leads the news here pretty much every single day. They've got nothing else to talk about, so they just talk about American politics here.
The Illawarra Hawks aren't showing out like that. They're not front page news.
You'd be surprised at how little coverage the NBL gets here. Like, I think the NBL is bigger in the minds of people in America because of all the players that have come into the NBA from there than it is here in Australia. I was watching the news, and like there was a sports segment, and the first segment was about like an injury to a rugby player, and then it was like preseason for Australian rules football, and then the third segment was like, oh, by the way, the Illawarra Hawks won the NBL championship in like a deciding game. I was like, that was the C slot in the sports segment of the Daily News. It was like that the championship game. So yeah. Anyway.
This Harry Lou Dort point should be leading the news because they could rob Dyson Daniels, the great barrier thief, of his fake DPOY and give Lou Dort a fake DPOY. That'd be fucked up.
He's at least an ethical case, A, because of all of his weird stocks, and then B, because he's like 6'7". Yeah. It's good to be tall. In general.
I have a stats meta discussion question for you, Owen. You've worked for a team. You worked for the Knicks. I don't want to ask for any like proprietary information or anything that's like too sensitive or active or whatever, but I just have this thing I've always wondered, because I mean, you sort of referenced it earlier. You hear it talked about all the time, where like people say like, oh, teams have their own internal models, or there's these like these data sets that we just don't have access to. And like, I've poked around on Synergy. It's like fine. Like there's a lot of good public shit out there. I guess like how different or how much more advanced are like the proprietary stuff?
Fairly more advanced. And again, my like sample size is 1. I want to like keep reiterating that point. Like I haven't worked for like multiple teams, so my experience is totally limited to what the New York Knicks were doing. But like the biggest thing is that all teams have access to the camera tracking data that's like installed in every single arena, and what that allows you to do is just like get way more detail on like finer pieces of information. So you can see, for instance, is he better going to his left or to his right in the pick and roll? Like how does he perform when the defender goes under the screen versus over the screen? How does he defend in blitzes and stuff like that? So like there are like these small little like micro stats that would probably be of a lot of interest to a lot of fans, and are of a ton of interest in terms of like game planning for your opponent, right? Like that's the thing coaches want to know about, is like, all right, how should we defend this pick and roll against this player? That information is like limited to just people who have access to Second Spectrum. And then on top of that, like 2 years ago, this technology called Hawkeye got partnered with the NBA. And you may have like seen their stuff like in tennis, like they have like the line technology or whatever. And they kind of expanded this idea, because previously, like the camera tracking data, it only could tell you where a player was based on the center of their mass. So like where on the court they were. But like this new Hawkeye technology can actually tell you like, all right, where was his arm? Like when he was contesting that 3, was it his left arm? Was it his right arm? Was it fully extended? Which foot was he jumping off of? All that kind of stuff. So there's just like way more like specific small little things like that teams have access to that fans don't. To the extent that like they're, useful, it depends a lot on who's delivering that information and like how receptive the audience is to it. So if you're maybe working with like an older coaching staff who isn't accustomed to a lot of this data, like it might be a little bit harder to bridge that gap. Which kind of speaks to what you're talking about earlier about like a lot of these young coaches, they came up in the era of this like camera tracking technology and have like a knowledge base of these statistics. So like JJ Redick came in and he understood a lot of these stats that his analytics team was probably feeding him from day one, because he had access to Second Spectrum when he was recording his podcast or whatever. So I do think like that's interesting. We're going to see like a wave of coaches who are coming in understanding like how to use this data in a way that's meaningful, and there are some coaches who are still like like points in the paint is what we need to care about. So it's interesting.
One just clarifying question: the Hawkeye and the Second Spectrum, is that like just legit not available to the public?
I think you could probably buy a license for like $50,000 or something like that.
Expensive.
There are some like media members and like organizations that have like they give media license to, but it's like it's rather limited, I think, on like what you can actually look at. But there's like tons of really good information on there. Like how you can look at how often a player has been double teamed. Like I tweeted out a chart a while back. Someone sent me this data, was like Zion Williamson has been double teamed like way more than any other player over the last 10 years in the camera tracking technology, and he's still awesome. So there's just all sorts of little weird nuggets and pieces of information you can pull up from out from under there.
Yeah, we use, I think it probably wasn't Second Spectrum, it was probably Synergy, but it was one of those pretty expensive tracking sites. We used one of them on a trial basis for a few months at Defector. And the level you could get to with that, where it's okay, how many points per possession do the Hawks get in the last 12 seconds of the shot clock on pick and rolls with an empty side corner? What I don't know if you could do that, but you could do crazy stuff. And really, we ultimately decided not to pay for the subscription because I was not smart enough to ask the right kinds of questions. And that sort of gets me to another broader 30,000 foot view question about stats and analytics, which is where do you think the sort of state of the discourse is, and do fans, I don't know, as someone who is in this business, it seems the sort of first wave of analytics revulsion is basically dead, and you see offensive rating, which is a very crude one, on team broadcasts and stuff. It seems people have sort of started to accept some degree of it, but also that people are wrong in some ways. I don't know, as someone who has worked for a team and now writes this great data Substack, I don't know, what do you think about just all of that? That's such a broad question. I'm so sorry.
No. I mean, it's something I think about a lot is is the discourse better than what it was 10 years ago? And I think undeniably, yes. The fact that people now are using offensive rating and defensive rating instead of points per game is a massive improvement. And if we went no further than that, who cares? A lot of but there's this one theory that assistant coach I was having dinner with one time said to me, he was if every analytics department in the NBA disappeared overnight, nothing would really change. Because all the low-hanging fruit has more or less been plucked, and it's in the coaches' minds now. And there are small things, little things that can give you a 1% edge here or there. But the days of finding some hack where you could improve your offense by 20% just by stepping back 2 feet and taking a different type of shot are gone. And there's not really another one of these earth-shattering revolutions in analytics coming. On these, at least some people don't think there are. Maybe there is. But in terms of public discourse, I don't know. It's I have a very narrow view of this because my feed is mostly other analytics professionals who are kind of doing a relatively good job of this. And the things that you see that are still problems were problems 10 years ago where people were using data incorrectly or whatever. So I don't know. It's it's fine. I don't know. It's it also just doesn't matter probably.
That is it. The idea of no more revolutions out there, I do find very interesting because I think a lot of the larger order evolutions in the way basketball has been played over the past 10 years has less to do, or maybe as much to do with this mathematical revolution as it is just literally Steph Curry. And a friend of mine had this great theory that basically basketball thinking would have arrived at where it is now, where it's hey, the shot worth 3 is 50% more than the shot worth 2, would have arrived, but basically would have arrived years later had Steph not come around to just sort of break open the game in this violent sort of eruption.
There's I was going to bring up a funny thing around, I was listening to this was years ago, but it came up, this old TrueAnon episode where they were talking about how in the early adoption of the iPhone, the swiping, the fact that you could swipe, older folks weren't kind of figuring it out that intuitively. But then Angry Birds came out, that extremely popular game for children and old people, and it gamified the swiping, and it sort of became extremely intuitive to do the swipe, and then all of a sudden there was this mainstream adoption of the swipe as a useful stroke and a kind of a very intuitive way to use your phone. And the Curry thing is kind of funny, where there was this inefficiency that was there and slowly, but then a guy did it in the coolest, most like rock star Hollywood style imaginable that had this very powerful ability to convince people of like, oh wait, threes, not only are threes more than two, they're like, they rule, they so it's funny how much like something as silly as like joy or fun or excitement can manufacture adoption for something as nerdy as like, shaving percentage points to win 80 games.
I love that theory. I think that makes a lot of sense. Like the Steph Curry as Angry Birds. And another more specific question. Speaking of Angry Birds, product of Finland, so is Thomas Usalo, who you mentioned earlier. Something that I sort of learned by just reading you, or like really learned a lot more about from reading you, is that like the Grizzlies play in a way that like no one else does. And I watch them and I like sort of understand it. And it looks like they're playing, like aesthetically, it looks like they're playing a slightly different version of what other teams do. But then you look at any of the numbers and it looks way different. Can you just explain like what's going on there?
Yeah, so like at a super high level, and I'll give credit to Ben Taylor, who runs the Thinking Basketball YouTube channel, which is great. Is like the single best resource for basketball in my mind. Like that quality's like up there, really high. So basically, the idea is that like Memphis started the year by not really running any ball screens like compared to the rest of the league. If you look at like what percentage of their possessions feature like a pick and roll where John Morant's like dribbling up the court and then like the big guy Zach Edey comes up and sets a screen and they go from there, it's like half as high as like the league average, which is very strange because that's sort of like John Morant's superpower is like you set a high ball screen for him and then he's like running downhill a million miles an hour and then tries to dunk over Kevin Love or whoever's standing there. This year when the Grizzlies brought in first off, they cleared out Taylor Jenkins like assistant coaches last summer. And that was like the writing was on the wall that Taylor Jenkins was probably going to get fired at some point when they did that. But anyway, they brought in like this guy from Finland, and then they also brought in this guy, I think his name is like Noah LaRoche, who is like from a Division III college basketball team. And they implemented like this new system where instead of running like pick and roll 75 times a game, what if we did it like 30 times a game and we just like ran around the court as much as possible and just kind of like played an offense that was completely different than the rest of the league, and then they'll have no idea how to defend it, and that this will create like easy baskets for us and it'll get everybody involved, and we won't have to rely on John Morant, who is like a walking injury concern every time he steps on the court, to like generate good offense. And for a while, this like seemed to be working. Like Memphis was playing really well. Like at one point, I think they were second in the West standings.
For like a while, I think, yeah.
Yeah. And then something seems to have switched where like the reporting seems to suggest that like John Morant was like pretty unhappy with his role because like his time on the ball was like way down. His like raw stats were down. He wasn't really like, looking like the superstar that he was just a couple of years ago. And so they started ramping up these pick and rolls again, like in more recent weeks and months, but that was not enough to save Taylor Jenkins' job. But it does like speak to a larger point that in the NBA, if everybody's playing one particular way, if you're the one team that has a counterpunch, like it can throw people off and they haven't seen it before. Like whether it works in the playoffs when you have time to game plan for it, different story. But in the regular season, you have so little time to prepare for the next game. Like as someone who worked for a team, when you're thinking about like, all right, we're planning for this game, and then we have to think about the game we have tomorrow as well, and we're going to have like 45 minutes to tell our players like, to have their attention and be like, this is what we need to do tonight. If they're not like locked in and like know that all of a sudden Memphis is going to play this extremely unique style, like it's going to be really effective against you. So that's just like a large point of saying that Memphis was doing something really different where they were trying to play in transition. They were trying to like speed things up, not run as many pick and rolls as the rest of the league. And but it resulted in Taylor Jenkins getting fired. So we'll see what kind of happens as the season progresses and goes into the playoffs.
And what was the kind of like efficiency angle thinking behind that? Like, because a pick and roll usually is a fairly efficient action to run, I think.
It's a classic for a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it has like a really high floor, particularly if you have like a ball dominant, like high usage guy who can like get to the rim really easily and make passes when the defense collapses, which is what John Morant is. I think, like, again, I don't know what was going inside the Memphis's coaching staff, but it doesn't shock me if they were thinking, hey, we need to be less reliant on John Morant so that when we get to the playoffs and like we run up against a really good defense who can shut him down, we have like another player who can do something with the ball. Like, that's one of the reasons, like, Jaren Jackson Jr. has played awesome this year. Like, he's having probably his best year of his career on offense. And I think part of that is just, like, they're not doing this same rote thing that everybody else is doing. In terms of, like, is it more efficient? I don't know. I think it's just, like, the idea is to just play a different style than everybody else and then hope that, like, that uniqueness by itself gives you an edge over your opponents.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm just imagining you're like a Dallas Mavericks player, and instead of being told like, okay, this is Zach LaVine, he dribbles with his right hand and shoots, it's like, this is Jalen Wells, he just runs in a big circle the whole game. Like, good luck, buddy. Okay, yeah,
but
that's
like
that.
It does like it. This is like the last like maybe the large point I want to leave you guys with. I know like on the rundown sheet you asked me like if there's one story about the NBA this year that I had to like tell in charts. It's that like the NBA has become what is referred to as like a weak link sport, whereas for many years it was a strong link sport. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with this concept between like weak link and strong link sport.
No,
okay,
can
Patrick,
you explain a little more?
Well,
okay,
to use a sort of analogy here, it's like, Harry, if this was a strong link sport, it's like your riffs and brilliant insights would be the thing that, you know, give us big money. But if podcasting was a weak link sport, then like my inability to contribute to our weekly agendas or understand the difference between Australian and North American time would be
not true.
more deleterious.
I reject the data set, but I understand the analogy.
No, it's true. Like, this podcasting is definitely a weak link sport. People are tuning out of the Phillips from this podcast.
That is actually true.
As soon as they hear that it's like, I don't know, who's a terrible guest that comes on and people don't even listen to it.
Howard Beck.
Wait, I want to talk about this in the Zach Lowe.
He's fine.
The post Zach
anyway,
Lowe.
sorry, we're tangenting on tangenting.
Sorry. We can go back to the Zach Lowe stuff because I do think there's some interesting tie-ins to this concept. But okay, so there's a book that came out in 2013 called The Numbers Game, and it was ostensibly about soccer, and it was talking about how.
Sorry. That is the stupidest name for a book.
Yeah, it's not good. It's not good. The Numbers Game. The Numbers Game. Anyway, I think there's actually a different title in different markets, but I think the American title for the book is The Numbers Game. Anyway, in 2013, it put forth this theory that like soccer is a weak link sport, and it's very different from the NBA, which is a strong link sport. So in a strong link sport, the team with the best player tends to win or succeed, whereas in a weak link sport, the team without the worst player tends to win. So like in soccer, if you have like 2 superstars, but you have like 2 or 3 garbage players, like it doesn't really matter because if you make like 7 good passes and then the 8th pass is dog shit, it kind of blows your whole game up. So that's why soccer, like you want to try to build out your roster, maybe thinking about who your worst player in your rotation is. Basketball for years and years was different. If you had LeBron James, it was like an open invitation to the NBA Finals. If you had Tim Duncan, if you had Kawhi Leonard when you were on the Toronto Raptors, all that kind of stuff. All you needed was like that one awesome player, and then you could kind of just jump on his back. I posit like in 2025 more than ever, the NBA has become more of a weak link sport where the worst player on the court determines your team's outcomes way more than your best player, which is like explains why the Nuggets are kind of mid, why the Bucks are kind of mid. Like they have 2 of the 3 best players, but they're not very good. And then you look at who are the best teams. Okay, Cleveland. They don't have like an obvious top 5 or maybe even top 10 player, but every single player on their team is like solid good. Like their worst player is Isaac Okoro or Sam Merrill or something like that. Like that guy's good and would be like, you know, in the 7th man of every team in the NBA. Oklahoma City, like yes, they have Shea and he's like awesome, but the reason why they're like world beaters is because they have Shea and they have literally a ton of role players who are super effective. Same thing with Boston. Like Tatum, like is he top 5? Is he not? Like I don't really care. But the point is that like their worst player is like Luke Cornett, and he's like really, really, really good. So you just have this like phenomenon now, I think, happen in the NBA where teams are still stuck in the mindset that, oh, we need to stack the best players and then we'll succeed, like Philadelphia tried to do this summer. But the truth is, I think you actually have to build out from your, like, thinking about who's at the end of your rotation and then build up from there.
That's so interesting, and that really like coheres a lot of the various like things we've kind of been talking about like, oh, playing defense harder and faster, like basically that requires your fourth and fifth guys to be locked the fuck in, right?
Exactly.
Well, and there's
so,
this... Oh, go ahead, Owen.
I was just gonna say, like, yeah, like this plays out in a lot of ways. You'll see it mostly in the playoffs, but I think you're seeing it in the regular season a lot, which is like, if you have a player on your rotation who can't shoot, the defense ignores them, and then you're playing 4-on-5. So like your weak link just like cost you the game. If you have a player in your rotation who can't play defense, if you have Trae Young, he's a weak link, and all of a sudden they're just going to run pick and roll at him over and over and over again. He costs you the game. It doesn't matter how good he is on offense if he's like fucking your shit up on defense. So, but that's just kind of like the dynamic that you see a lot in the playoffs. But I also think you're seeing it more now in the regular season as well.
That makes sense, and maybe this will serve as justification for the Luka trade. Maybe Nico sees that like there are some weak leaky things to Luka, and betting huge on him and a guy with deficiencies, like maybe that is actually like an outdated team building model, and he like figured out that this shift was happening.
I have like a nuclear take about that, which is like, yeah, like I do think Nico might have been, I don't know if this is what he had in mind. Almost certainly it was not. But there is like a very plausible scenario to me where the Mavericks are really good next year, like maybe better than the Lakers, and everyone's like, damn, Nico like kind of cooked with this trade a little bit, especially if Max Christie turns into like anything, serviceable in terms of like a top 6 or 7 player.
Dude, that's going to be the most cracked out NBA takes, is the like, actually the Nico Harris won the trade, but then the Kyrie injury derailed it, so that's why they're bad. Like, look at the people, screaming that into the void. I love it. Let's, before I got to go play basketball, actually go play some real basketball, which I will be thinking about actually, we were running the stupidest bit at our game, which is ties into this, which was trying to figure out if anybody in our run shoots 40, 50, 90. And the 90 is the free throw to get into the game. So you really got to hit that first free throw, or else you're pretty much screwed on 90. My friend Dave got 40, 50, 90 for the first game, so shout out to him. But let's end with this Zach Lowe, a brief discussion on Zach Lowe. Well, we got to have you on again because there's so many. I want to talk about this like API free market and AI stuff affecting it. So we'll talk to you again. But we and this is actually, there's some real incredible synchronicity here with Hardwood Paroxysm being the second guest on the Low Post as a early blog boy analytic guy turned, I don't know what he's been up to, but here is the question for you. Try to game out the next 5 Zach Lowe Post guests. And our listeners, please, you know what, actually, this can be the 5-star review thing. Give us a review, give us a 5-star review, and give us your next 5. So we've got Howard Beck, we've got Andrew Slater?
Anthony. He also
Slater?
confirmed Stein is coming on next week.
Yeah, I was going to say Stein.
Well, so that's good. So give me 5 more. I will give you mine, which is I'm thinking. So he's got HP. He's got Stein. I'm going Chris Herring, Coach Thorpe, a return to Beck, John Krasinski.
Yeah, the Wolves guy.
And that's it. That's my 5.
I could take a shot here. Isn't Thorpe on today's pod as well? Isn't he the one that's on the second half of the pod with?
If he is, then that's just me being a genius.
It doesn't look like it, no.
Okay. I thought for some reason I saw that. Okay, so I'll take a shot here.
Because he's unmoored from ESPN, so it could be a
be anybody. So I'm gonna go more in-house. I'm gonna say in some order. It's gonna be Chris Vernon, since he's a Ringer employee.
Oh yeah.
We're gonna hear from Kirk Goldsberry.
Yes.
That seems like a lock.
I always liked the Kirk and Zach pods.
Yeah. We're gonna get Kevin Pelton on, no doubt. He's a friend of the Low Post, and then I'm gonna say Tim Legler, because he's calling games and he's been on the pod a couple of times and really good. And then I'm gonna put out a wild card here. I think he's gonna bring Kevin Arnovitz back. Kevin Arnovitz has been out of the game for a while. I think he's like a screenwriter now or something like that. But I'm gonna say Kevin Arnovitz comes on the pod.
I would love I like all of these. I have a lot of overlap with you guys, but I'm just thinking there'll be the Thorpe playoff preview, and then there will be Knicks win 2 games, let's get Herring on, Thunder sweep, let's get Andrew Schlecht. I think the guests will be in a rhythm where it's national person or friend of the Low Post, and then premier beat writer for team performing well. He'll have Kelly Iko on if the Rockets do something crazy.
I have a wild card.
All the time.
Wild card. I'm going after her hopeful appearance on the Nothing But Respect podcast one day. Caitlin Cooper as a wild card Pacers person who's also just she's aces.
That's your one of one. Give her an MVP vote.
Yeah, she's the best.
Yeah. And dude, maybe Owen. Who knows? Maybe he'll call you in, Owen. After this, he's a listener of the Low Post. I mean, of the Nothing But Respect podcast. So he
follows me on Twitter. So maybe we'll see.
Okay, there you go. Well, you should all go follow Owen on Twitter, and actually, you should read F5. You got a lot of. We didn't get into this, but the stuff you do is excellent. But then also you do some really cool tutorials. I think are most of them behind a paywall. I haven't done any of them myself, but they seem the best way to tap in.
The general structure of it is Wednesday or Thursday, there's a free newsletter up that's general discussion about the NBA and stuff like that. And then if you're interested in working with NBA data or learning how to code, there's a paid version on Friday that recreates the analysis and the charts for anyone who's trying to break into sports analytics or just programming languages in general.
Yeah, it's super interesting. Everyone should subscribe.
Agreed. All right, Patrick, you got anything coming?
Just playoff prep stuff. I'm in the lab learning to watch games again, so yeah, we'll get there.
Hell yeah. Same. We'll see.